work with him. I don't have any problem with the guy, disagreeing. That's fine, but it just don't keep stepping on my words. And if I say, "Do you understand?" Don't step on my words. And he doesn't respond. Then he's telling me he doesn't want to abide by that. So on that alone, okay, you're gone. I just want to have a decent conversation. If he doesn't want to have it, then he can't be in here. That's all. He's not going to have a conversation. He doesn't want to have a decent one. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think one of the last times I blocked him was when he says, "Yeah, none of you Protestants actually believe in the Trinity anyway." I just said, "That's just weird ad hominem. Get out of here." So, that was one of the last discussions I had with him several months back. But yeah,
This
all right,
is what I would say though. The councils are necessary because there's heretics, and so usually we have a council when there's enough heresy around that it needs to be quashed. And I think that's what the purpose of just about every council has been.
Yeah.
or at least in the early church, they got weird in the Middle Ages. But yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I did think you handled pretty decently. You gave him quite a few chances there to be to show some good faith, and I think it was lacking. So we'll go to the next person there who Salam. Welcome, good to see you. And then we'll try to go to the PTR order. Thanks for letting me show up a little late here. I was dealing with some family matters and just recovering. I'm back in Japan after 2 weeks and really busy. I had a whirlwind tour in the United States.
I could be
How
on.
about you? How about you, Kit?
No, I just came in to tell Matt he's right. I didn't come in to ask questions. So I think honest inquiry is up, but if I'm wrong, somebody just tell me.
No worries. I just wanted to say thank Matt for answering my question that I had earlier.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Salam. Yeah, Salam's been great. She's been always good faith questions. All right. Let's go to welcome back. It's Jeff is back, and Jeff, let's have some good dialogue. You've never been blocked, so
Yeah,
I know
thank
we've
you.
stepped on toes. We stepped on toes here and there, but you're welcome back, and trust you to ask some good faith questions, and remember to allow Matt to answer your questions as we go forward.
That's a
Yeah.
great
So,
intro. Go ahead. I didn't mean to overstep.
hey, thanks, Philstar. I appreciate it. Hey, Matt. So, I would love to have the conversation. Um, and I think that I can own up to some frustrations in the past, and I could have done things differently. And to be honest, I see maybe some times when Matt could have done some things differently, but I still do want to have the same conversation respectfully, if we can do that. If it's just too frustrating and it's going to devolve, then I don't want to push buttons, but I am interested in that same question that I keep asking, and you know what it
Okay.
is, and so I'm not even going to articulate it, just to ask if you want to go there. Then I will be as
Sure.
respectful as I can. I will try to not overtalk, and if you will extend the same courtesy, then I would love to have the conversation because yeah, I find you an interesting interlocutor, and you challenge me, and I hope that at some level I challenge you. Maybe not. I may not be, but yeah. So thanks for the space.
And okay, that's fine. I appreciate that. Now, will you accept the fact that I want to answer questions the way I want to answer questions? Is that okay?
Yeah. And I'm
Good.
willing, and if you want to um, make your answer to my question to ask me questions, then I'm willing to submit to that, and I will submit to it as long as you'd like. Is if you will allow me the same courtesy to continue to ask you questions, or we can go back and forth. You can ask me a question, I can ask you a question, um, whatever you think's the easiest way to do it. But my question is that the argument for P1 of the transcendental argument for God, the first premise that all intelligibility and all facts have to be grounded in the unembodied mind of the Christian God. That seems to be your stance, right? And so um, I'm still looking for the argument for that. And if you want to try to formulate an argument, I would love to hear that. If you don't want to do that and you want to in turn ask me about my worldview, I will be happy to answer those questions if we can turn around at the end and let's address my single question. Thank you.
So I would say that all actualities and potentialities must derive their existence from the causal chain that precedes them. Since all actualities and potentialities don't exist independently, excluding God, of course, here, but they don't exist independently. And the existence out of a causal chain, the causal chain cannot go back infinitely. It has to have an initial point, and I can explain why. There must be a single uncaused cause that initiates the chain of events. The single uncaused cause is either personal or impersonal. The impersonal cause cannot be demonstrated to have the necessary and sufficient conditions to initiate the causal chain. Therefore, the personal cause is necessary. And only the Trinitarian being provides the necessary preconditions which justifies the universals of the laws of logic and the universals of particulars issue. That would be the basics of why I would say that's the case. Okay?
All right, so I tried to write down as much as that as I could. You said there's a causal chain.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to write it down.
Well, yeah, I was trying my
Yeah,
best because you asked me to have a serious conversation, and I really want to, and I've asked you for an argument, and you've tried your best here, and I've had this conversation with you many times, and so I wanted to take much care to write down as much as I could. You were going very fast. Um,
yeah. Let me go slowly.
okay, so can I tell you what I have, and then you can fill in the gaps
Sure,
for me as I write? Would that work? Is that okay?
sure.
Okay. You said there was a causal chain. Um, um, that causes don't exist independently because there cannot be an infinity. There has to be a single uncaused cause. That uncaused cause has to be either personal or unpersonal. And then I kind of lost it after that. So did I get that much right, or is there
Yeah.
any?
That's good, actually, pretty good.
Yeah.
If I'd have known that you were going to write it down, I would have gone more slowly, but
Okay.
that's
So
fine.
after either personal or unpersonal, what was the next thing you said?
Then only the Trinitarian, wait, let's see. I'm sorry. Either the personal, okay, well, let me back up. It's either the personal or impersonal cause, and the impersonal cause cannot provide the necessary grounding to initiate the causal chain.
Okay,
So
so
therefore,
hang on a second. Impersonal. I'm sorry. So impersonal cause
cannot
cannot ground what?
the initiation of the causal chain.
So impersonal. Okay, it just seems like a claim. Okay. But, okay. All
This is
right. So
just rough stuff going through. Okay.
okay.
So therefore, the personal cause is what's left. So it has to be a personal cause.
Okay. So that's the one thing that probably I think that's as I was hearing you get through it the first time that the impersonal cause um, cannot ground things, and so I guess we'd have to talk about what impersonal is or what grounding is. I don't know. There's just so much there. I don't,
Hmm.
a causal chain. Um, uh, well, I guess if I went through the premises one at a time. So you said there's a causal chain. Okay, so I would agree to that. I would say that my human perception and what I understand is there seems to be a causal chain of events around me. So I would agree that that's my perception. And that seems to be intuitive and the natural thing to that seems to be true. So I will say that, but I will caveat that with saying that does not necessarily mean it to be true because people used to think that intuitively the Earth was flat. So we know that things that may be intuitive may not always be true. So I would caveat with that. That causes don't exist independent of one another. Is that the second premise? Is that right?
Yeah, an event
An event.
is not without a context. Events occur because of another event. Something causes it. They don't.
Uh,
An
okay.
event does not exist independently.
Yeah,
What
so
do
I
you think?
guess if you're going to talk about an event, then that's an actual physical something that we're talking about. An event would be a proposition of something that would be mind dependent that an event took place. So I would agree that you couldn't have um, an event without something preceding it. But still, on the causal chain, I would still have the caveat, and especially I guess as we get to premise three, that you said infinities can't exist, and I think there's lots of good physicists that that are, are saying that there's not good reasons why we can't think that infinities could exist, and that was probably one of the first places. I don't know. I kind of got issues with all of them, but especially saying there's no infinity. It seems to be just a claim. Maybe we could talk about that. Um,
Yeah, I didn't say there was no infinity or infinity could not exist, but that a causal chain of infinite events preceding cannot be.
uh, okay, so that seems to be a claim, and so I guess I'd have to ask why that's the case. What's the argument for that? I know I say that a lot, and I don't mean that to be flippant, but I'm seriously asking. Okay, you say there can't be an infinite number of causal events, but when I see and I look at and read papers and look at some things that I look at, it seems to be there's some very well-known physicists that are very well, accredited and peer-reviewed that seem to think that infinite um, causal chain of events may in fact be possible. Wow, Matt. Holy crap.
What?
It
I'm
sounded
like an
like,
ice machine.
yeah, it sounded like you were, yeah, I mean, I thought maybe you'd have the courtesy to mute while I was talking, but okay.
No, actually, my apologies. I covered my microphone with my hand. I've done it before, and no one's ever heard anything. And so I was surprised you guys heard that. I guess I didn't do it properly. My apologies. Just getting ice from my water. That's all.
It
So,
was
yeah,
an ice machine.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, I've done it many times, and no one's ever said anything. And I cup it and I grip it in my hand really tightly, and you're the first time anybody's ever said, "What was that?" So I just must have not done it right, I guess.
No, no, no worries. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we could talk about the no infinities, um, but 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 then the next was single uncaused cause. Even if I grant all of that, right? So let's just say I'm willing to grant a causal chain, and all the way to either personal or unpersonal. I guess I'd want to unpack that a little bit. I'm not sure what you mean by personal or unpersonal. Um, and you're saying that, and it having to be personal. So can we unpack that a little bit for me?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. Um, Let me back up a little bit. So the idea of a what's called an actual infinite versus a potential infinite. The idea, and I know that let me back up again. There are physicists who say an actual infinite is possible. There are others who say there's not. And when someone says it's peer reviewed, it means it's reviewed by their own people in their own camp who have the same assumptions and presuppositions that they do. Doesn't mean they're always going to conclude the same thing, but that's what a peer review means. I think you should have non-peer reviewed stuff as well as peer reviewed. That's what I think. That's why I think there's a problem with peer review because of that. But nevertheless, that's like saying, for example, all the pastors got together and peer reviewed an article written by another pastor who wrote against quantum physics. Well, it's peer reviewed and it passed. So see how good it is.
Well, I would
That's a
disagree,
problem.
though. Yeah, I would disagree because I think that peer review, by definition, includes people that are trying to disprove the thesis being put forth by the writer, right? So that's the whole point is that I mean that's literally how science works is that people have alternate ideas that they want to be true and they're working to try to disprove these theories of these other people because they want to put forth their own theory. And so what happens is that a consensus builds over time of people looking at all of these things and performing experiments and looking at the data in a consensus kind of form. So it's not perfect, of course, because we change our minds about things all the time. But peer review certainly includes people who have dissenting opinions. That's the whole point of it. So I feel like it's a little dishonest of you to say that peer review only includes people that agree with the people writing it. That's a straw man, in my opinion.
Well, confirmation bias is a problem within peer review. It's a potential problem. If they're experts in the same field and their peers, then they already affirm the positions held in that field. So it can lend itself towards a confirmation
I would
bias
agree with
that's
that.
needed.
Yeah, I would agree with
Okay.
that. Yeah, if a person is has holds, then the confirmation bias there. But the whole point is that with peer review processes, it's put out there for anybody to review, and there's always, and almost with certainty, dissenting opinions and people who are trying to disprove that theory because that's how science works. So again, to say that that science operates on confirmation bias, there's processes in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. There's double blind studies and blind studies, and there's all these experiments that millions of people do to make sure that those biases are taken into account, and that we're smart enough to know what those biases are, and they actually manipulate the data to compensate for those biases, right? And so I still think you're just saying it's a little bit of a straw man to just say, well, it's just these group of people that are just patting each other on the back. I don't think that's a fair assessment.
Well, first of all, I wasn't saying that. And scientists certainly have their own biases and their ways of suppressing information that's counter to their claims, their theories, their ideas. After all, they're people, and science is full of examples of that, like that. And it doesn't mean it's stopped, but nevertheless, peer review is sometimes accused of protecting established opinions and not being open to genuinely new ideas. That is the case. I know that. And here's another issue. The peer review is only as good as the standards by which are in place. So a less prestigious peer review panel might give you a different result than one more prestigious, or vice versa. So I'm just saying peer review is only as good as the people in it, the criteria, and everything else that goes along with it. It's not infallible, and it certainly is flawed because people are involved.
Yeah, I
So
wouldn't
that's it.
disagree. Yeah, I would
All
disagree.
right.
So yeah,
So
that it could, and there's probably cases, and absolutely cases you could point to where there's biases has played a part. But I think also have to agree that the scientific process compensates for that and does its best to expose it and get rid of it and make sure that it doesn't play a part in driving the data, right?
not always. There are plenty of
Well,
accounts.
yeah,
That
I got not always, but yeah, but I'm saying that the process itself, it wants to do that. The definition of the scientific process is to want to get rid of the bias, right? That's part of the process of science is to exclude bias. That's a goal of science, is to get rid of bias.
nobody gets rid of bias. Everybody has it. Everybody does, and so you cannot exclude that. When you find irreducible complexity or design implication in biological structures, information structures, and automatically the scientists say it cannot be from God or any designer, then that's a bias. And then they will find ways to confirm their own bias and operate theories that are
It
in
doesn't.
place.
It works the other way around as well, though, right? The people who say that
Of
it must
course
be.
it does.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So fair enough.
Of course it does.
So biases work in both directions. Okay, yeah. So we're clear
Of,
on that.
of
So
course it does. That's why I don't put much credence in peer review. I want
um,
just facts. I just want facts. And I
what
prefer
what
the facts.
well, how do you define
And
a fact then?
science,
I mean, what would you
well,
accept as fact, right? I guess we'd have to talk about that then.
Well, now we're getting into philosophy. Science is based on philosophy, and it's a philosophical approach to learning. And then we have to define what a fact is. We have to get into philosophy and things like that. But we're back.
I'm
I
willing to
say,
talk about what a fact is. I mean, and I'm willing to talk about what truth is. We can talk about the philosophy if we need to, if you want to. I mean, I can distinguish what I would call a fact between what I call something that's truth, because I see truth is something that's a propositional statement. It's mind dependent, and I can say, 1 + 1 is 2. That's a proposition, and that's true as long as I have a mind to put the math together. But without a mind, it would be a fact that there may be a rock beside a rock in a riverbed, and those, if there was a mind to observe it, it could be two, but it would be a fact that there's two rocks there, but it wouldn't be true that there's two rocks there. So that's how I distinguish the difference between truth and a fact. That facts are not mind dependent. Truth is mind dependent.
So what do
Well,
you want to talk about?
well, before we do a deep dive into epistemology, which is I think we're about to, did you want to take on another question from someone, and then we circle back around to Jeff?
Yeah,
Because
sure. You guys
last,
go ahead. Yeah,
last
thanks.
time,
Thanks for the time on the stage, man. You guys go ahead. Thanks,
uh,
Matt. I appreciate it. It's been a good conversation, and
yeah,
yeah. So
but
I'll hang out. Yeah.
wait for a second, Jeff. So I did link the transcendental argument from Carm, an article that Matt wrote back in 2008. Quite extensive, quite good. Addresses a lot of the premise questions that you brought up, and perhaps some reading of that might be helpful to you in a further discussion. And
Oh,
then
that's a good idea. Yeah.
there
Sorry,
you
go
go.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. I like that article. Great article, Matt. And then also, Jeff, stick around because there may be time to get into epistemology. I just wanted to make sure we're fair to other people in the audience and on stage, because I think last time we had you for over an hour in our
No,
roughly
I
2 hour.
appreciate you guys are very gracious, and I'm much happier with the conversation tonight. I made a point. I wanted to come in tonight um, to try to have the conversation, and I appreciate. I feel like Matt has been very gracious. I've done my best to be gracious, and I felt like this was a great conversation, and I really appreciate the time because
It was good.
yeah, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
it was good. I think a lot of it was you didn't come and go.